Do you ever get stuck in a rut where you're not really making any progress and your goals become less and less clear? You lose sight of what you were once aiming for, and so your practice sessions become scatterbrained and you really just stop making progress. Let's change that today. You see, everything you ever need to learn on the drums to become a professional sounding, really musical, well-rounded player can be broken down into two essential core areas. Today we're talking about what these two core concepts are, and most importantly, we're laying out a clear, step-by-step path to success you can follow so that you know you're hitting the core essential things that you always need to work on every day, and you're reaching success and mastery on the drums. You can do this. Hey, be sure to grab my free gift to you in the description, a copy of the PDF guide, Know What to Practice, the 3-part daily practice routine that helps busy people reach their drumming goals just in the midst of the chaos of everyday life. If you're an everyday person with a busy life, this guide is definitely for you because it's going to help you organize your practice sessions. It's literally going to be your companion to today's lesson since we're breaking down what are the most important things we need to work on. Be sure to check this out. All right, on with today's lesson. Those two essential areas of focus are technique and listening. It's that simple. When you think about it, if you break this down as simple as it can possibly go, everything we do on the drums is centered around technique, hand technique, foot technique, coordination, and listening. And listening encompasses all those aural skills that actually create the right dynamics and the right feel. And so you can't have one of those without the other. You've got to have both of those parts, and you have to figure out how can I practice all of these things equally so that I'm developing as a well-balanced player. Because if one of these things is missing, or you're not working enough of one of those areas, that could very well be why you feel like you're not making progress, why you're stuck in a rut. And so as I explain this, and as we get into the nitty-gritty of how to practice all this, I want you listening and paying attention in the light of thinking through, okay, how have I felt stuck? In what ways do I feel like I'm not making progress? In what areas do I feel like I need to push a little more, work a little harder? Be thinking through that. So in other words, as you're going through this lesson, be listening actively like we talked about last week in the listening lesson and thinking through, all right, how does this apply to me? What do I need to work on? So let's dig in. It's also safe to say that listening is the side of drumming that should be the motivation for the technical side of drumming. It's kind of the right brain, left brain thing, because in a way the technique is kind of like the math, and then the listening, the aural side, the musical side, that's the creative side. And you can't have fun, at least I can't, you can't have fun playing the drums without some of that musical creativity, but you can't do well at the musical creativity without the math side, the focused technical side that makes sure that you've got your playing in order and things are in time so that you're able to then focus on the music. But if you always have that focus of letting the listening side, letting the music inspire the technical side, then you won't run out of motivation. A lot of times what happens is drummers are frustrated by where they're at in their playing, and so they know that, all right, I need to work on these exercises, I need to work on my rebound, I need to work on increasing coordination, but they get so sucked in and bogged down with those exercises that they lose sight of why they were motivated to do that in the first place. And generally, the big original motivation was music. It was a favorite song, a favorite band. And so always be listening to music and gaining your inspiration from that and letting, okay, I want to learn this song. Keep that inspiration there so that that's always inspiring all the technical work. Those two things go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. Technique can be broken down into those two main areas of hand technique and coordination. And we could add foot technique also, though foot technique is not really a crucial right or wrong kind of skill compared to hand technique. And so in a way, foot technique kind of gets covered in coordination. As you're working on coordination, you end up working the feet too. And so we can keep it simple and say hand technique and coordination. So my questions for you right now, what are you working on right now to increase your hand technique? If you're stuck in any sort of rut, but maybe you're not actually working on the right things to increase your hand technique, well, there you go. I'm going to show you some stuff here in a little bit that'll help get you going. Are you working on anything to further your coordination? Like maybe you've been frustrated by how your left foot can't really do much while you're playing a groove, or your right foot keeps wanting to follow your right hand, and so you lack that independence. What are you working on to split those limbs? What are you working on to increase your coordination? A well-balanced practice session involves each of those things. You're always working on the hand technique, you're working on the coordination. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty, the how, here in a little bit, and I'll show you some specific things to do and give you some good resources. Then on the flip side, if we look at listening, so this is kind of the fun side. Honestly, listening is the fun side. You just can't do these things well without having the physical, without having the technique in place. But listening encompasses the aural side of playing, of musicality, of dynamics, feel, knowing what to play, how to play it, the fun stuff, the reasons why we got into drums in the first place. That's what listening is. And so if we were to try to simplify that and just break it down into a couple areas, there's ear training, which we talked about last week. Be sure to check out that lesson where we give some exercises for ear training and for just deepening your ability to listen and hear things that you wouldn't ordinarily be able to hear on a recording. And then there's sound and feel, because the sound of your drums, the sound you create when you're playing and the feel you create, that's kind of the intersection of great technique and really great listening. Because you have to have the technique in order to have a good sound and a good feel, but you also have to be listening, and that creative side of your brain has to be working in order to make that happen. And so sound and feel are a very important side of listening. So there's the what. You know what needs to be happening, what you need to be doing in your practicing as a general thing. Like, okay, these are the areas that I need to be focusing on and make sure I'm working these things, doing a little bit of this every day. But okay, the how. How do we do this? How do we practice in such a way as to make sure we're improving our hand technique, we're improving our coordination, we're improving our ear training skills, our ability to hear things, our sound and our feel on the drums? How can we work at all of these things all at the same time so that we have well-rounded practice, so that we're actually developing into the professional sounding, polished drummer that we want to be? I'm going to go through this as quickly as I can, but in depth enough that that everything is clear and you have some direction here. But I'm also going to give you some further resources so you can dig even more into specifics. So hand technique. I recommend starting every practice session with hand technique. Just play slow singles. Focus on one hand at a time for a while. Like just sit there with right hand going and then left hand going. Our goal is loose rebound, which, give you this in a nutshell, which centers around what I like to do here, middle finger fulcrum, where I'll actually grip the stick roughly kind of here, midway up my middle finger, and I've got the edge of my thumb there on it, so it kind of looks like this. Other fingers are gently curling around. Index is more of a guardrail. It's kind of a guiding finger here, which allows this super free, loose rebound, where you can see how the stick just pops up and it pivots right there from this point. The key to having a lot of loose motion on the drums and being able to be relaxed is actually having the stick move within your hand so that your wrist doesn't have to move a lot. If your wrist is having to go up and down, you're going to develop wrist pain. You're actually going to develop stiffness, which I know is kind of ironic. We want to have wrist looseness, but if we're having to move our wrist a lot, that's not always a good thing. Instead, we want to have the stick moving within our hand like this, so it's actually pointing perpendicular to our thumb on the rebound. We want thumb to be still. Thumb is kind of like an axle here. The stick pivots up. That's what you want to focus on. Focus on doing that. Just dropping the stick, letting it bounce freely, reminding yourself that, okay, I'm not in control. Physics, gravity, gravity and rebound, those are the two forces at play here. And get really comfortable with that. I'll link some additional lessons below. I want to make sure you've got everything you need here. This is it in a nutshell. Focus on this every day. Start each practice session with this, knowing that this is the most important core thing you could be doing. If you get that loose rebound happening, your playing becomes so much more effortless and relaxed. That's huge because that applies across the board and makes playing songs way easier, way more fun, and frees up your brain for being able to focus on music because you're not having to think so much about what your hands are doing. And so that's how you want to start every practice session. I did a recent video about kind of this wacky grip where you do the stick between your fingers here. Which I think was something Carmine Appice would do, and some other drummers have done weird grips like this before. I'll link that video below if you want to check that out. That can be a good way to understand the feeling of that free rebound and what the stick ought to be doing, so then you can transition to a normal grip. Definitely check out that lesson if this is new to you. Coordination. So I'll be honest with you, when I was first learning drums, I didn't sit there and practice coordination exercises. I just learned songs. And for a lot of you, that's where you've been. Maybe you've been self-taught for a long time. Maybe you started playing in a band years ago and you never really took lessons, but you just learned the songs. And by doing that, you inherently built a lot of coordination. And that is a totally valid way to build coordination. Learning songs, learning grooves that incorporate the feet, especially right foot playing different kick patterns while right hand is playing timekeeping. Doing that alone will push your coordination for sure. But most of the time that'll only take you so far, and there may be times you encounter a song that's like, oh, I don't know if I can do this, and you end up getting frustrated because you're stuck on this one song that involves some crazy left foot stuff or some hi-hat stuff that you're not really sure how to do. And so that's where it's really great to have regular exercises and coordination practices that you do, so that you're always building up your foundation there. You're always building up that coordination foundation so that you rarely encounter a song you can't play. That's the ideal goal. Imagine yourself in a place where you've worked your coordination up to a level where you can play pretty much any song thrown at you on a rock gig, a pop gig, funk gig, where, we're not playing crazy fusion stuff or Latin stuff. That's its own thing. But in most pop gigs, imagine if you could just play any song thrown at you because you've got your coordination under control. That's big, and that's something you want to be working on in every practice session. So if that's where you're at and you know that, all right, I'm not really sure what the next step is I need to take with coordination, check out that guide that I mentioned a few minutes ago, the 3-part daily practice routine, because that has so many specific exercises you can do that further your coordination. There's so much packed into that guide, you can almost just pick and choose which ones you want to do, which ones you want to focus on, which ones you like and enjoy practicing, because they're all going to help your coordination, your foot's ability to play syncopated patterns and play all of that in relation to your hands. And so that's big, that's huge. Definitely check that out, as well as some recent lessons here on the channel about how to use Ted Reed's syncopation, legendary method, George Lawrence Stone's stick control, another legendary method. You can use both of those on the drum set for creating really cool different types of groove patterns and styles, and that'll push your coordination a bunch. So 3-part daily practice routine in the description, as well as those 2 previous lessons where you can dig into a bunch of specifics that just explain and break down how we can push our coordination and come up with very simple, achievable, doable exercises that help so much with freeing things up and building that 4-way coordination. But then ear training, how do we train our ear? Like how do we learn to listen better? For some of you who come from a background of playing other instruments, that has played an integral part in your ear training, where maybe you've already developed a lot of those skills from playing bass or guitar, piano, or violin, something like that. But if drums are your first instrument, and especially if you're self-taught and you feel like you're lacking in that area, definitely check out last week's video on 5 exercises, 5 must-know ear training exercises for every drummer. That's going to help you out a lot. I also have another e-guide that is 5 steps to learning any song in under an hour. We focus on how pop songs are structured and how we can break those down and learn to predict them. And so if you're in that spot where you just need to learn how to listen more carefully, listen more deeply, you know that that's a weak point, then definitely check out that guide. All this stuff is in the description for you, so you can choose which your next step is and what you know that you need to do to start making more progress in your practicing. But then that final piece of the puzzle is really the sound and feel, where what will happen once you've learned to listen better, once you've got your coordination where it needs to be, once your hand technique is where it needs to be, and you've got loose rebound happening, the sound and the feel will start to happen naturally. Now, I did a couple of lessons on this recently, one specifically on time, playing with good time, and then one specifically on feel, playing with good feel. I'll link those 2. Definitely check those out for more detail on this, because the truth is you don't have to have perfect time in order to feel great when you're grooving. The feel comes more from the sound and from the dynamics and the dynamic consistency. And in order to be dynamically consistent, where every snare backbeat sounds the same and your timekeeping is steady, so much of that stems from the hands. That's why I want the biggest takeaway from today to be start every practice session with hand technique, because that's so important. That helps your timekeeping, it helps your feel, because then you're able to relax more and establish motion. When you as a drummer establish motion, where you've got this kind of thing going on, you could do this in your sleep and it's still going to be pretty steady because you're doing a motion. You're not just sitting there going, you're not doing that, you're doing a motion. Backbeats can be a little bit of that whipping motion, and if you're keeping time, bum, 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 you're establishing a motion that lends itself to steady time and steady dynamics. And so sound and feel, those things naturally happen as a culmination of all these previous things. So if you work on the hand technique, you've got your coordination to a point where your playing is becoming more autopilot, then you're spending time listening to music and actively listening and hearing things you haven't heard before and really paying attention to what's going on around you. In doing all of that, you're furthering your coordination because you're coordinating more parts of your brain as you're paying more attention to what you're hearing while you're playing. And all of that together helps your playing feel better and be more musical And eventually that all works together to help you know how to play things and what's the right part, because you're listening to the music and you're listening to the band while you're playing rather than focusing on yourself. That's the ultimate culmination here, and that's where I want you to be. That's what I want you to get to. Once you've mastered all these things, where you've worked all of them up to a level where they all start to intersect. It's like a pyramid, and there are all these different things that have to happen. You get up to a point, though, where it all starts to come together. Everything starts to become more fulfilling, satisfying, fun, because you're able to play what you want to play, and you're able to play it well because you're listening. That's what I want you to understand here. And so if your practice sessions are made up of all these things, hand technique, coordination, and music, those are kind of the three big ones in a way. If we have hand technique and coordination as their own things, then we could break this down into three areas, which is what we do in the 3-part practice guide, where we've got hand technique, coordination, music. Do those three things and work those three things consistently. And number one, you're going to stay motivated because you're going to be working on music. That's so important. Number two, you're not going to get stuck in a rut because you're always going to have something specific to work on. If you're stuck in a rut, that means that either you've lost motivation or you literally don't know what's next. You don't know what your next step is. Today, I've given you a bunch of next steps, and I've shown you here's how you stay motivated. Stay grounded in music. Stay rooted in music. And in having fun listening to music and learning songs, and let that inspire all the technical work. Those two things should keep you going. I really hope they will. That's what kept me going. Songs inspired me to work on my coordination so that I could play the songs better. I always had a specific exercise I was working at, and so having that specific in front of me made it easy. I didn't have to think, I just had to sit there and do it. And so I've given you a bunch of specifics here. Download the 3-part practice routine guide and check out those previous lessons I mentioned. It's all in the description, so that you'll have a lot of specific next steps right there in front of you, so you have no excuse to not do these. So take action, go download those, get rolling, get to your practice room, start taking those next steps, stay grounded in the music, stay motivated, stay inspired, because the music is probably what got you into the drums in the first place, and you're not going to be stuck in any more ruts, and you're going to master the drums because you've got these two areas under your belt. When you're focusing on these two big areas of technique and listening, that's how you truly master this instrument. That's how you succeed on the drums and you sound like a true pro. So if you're wanting to reach your drumming dreams in the midst of a busy life, grab the 3-part practice routine. If you're wanting to gain confidence in your playing, you gain confidence when you know you're practicing the right thing, and when you're working the skills that really matter and you're mastering technique. It's a huge confidence builder. Build your confidence, download the guide. Fix your weak hand and build precise, fluid time like we talked about. That's all right there in the guide. And learn the 5 biggest tips for playing songs musically. Lastly, stop wasting time. Stop wasting time stuck in a rut. Make progress much more quickly. It's all there in the guide. I hope I've sold you on this. It's free. It's a no-brainer. Go grab the 3-part daily practice guide in the description. That's going to help you so much and provide so much direction. This has been helping so many drummers. So many of my one-on-one students first downloaded this guide and got working on all of this before they came to me asking for coaching. And it helped them so much with having clarity and direction in their playing. And so that's been so cool to see how much this has helped people. And so I want you to be one of them. You can do this. Take action, download the guide, and you're going to thank yourself later. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. Become a fellow non-glamorous drummer. We got a whole bunch of non-glamorous lessons here that help you learn the core skills that really help you master the drums. We're not doing any frou-frou fluff. We focus on what really matters here, because I want you to save time and I want you to reach your goals faster. So this is how we do it, non-glamorous drumming skills. So if you're new, be sure to subscribe. And for all you guys who watch these videos every week, thank you so much. Thanks for hanging out with me and for taking action on this stuff. It's always so cool to hear from you guys who download the guides, who practice this stuff, and who really make progress. Like you're the people I'm making these videos for. If you're somebody who doesn't want to take action and you kind of just don't really care that much, I can't really say that these lessons are for you, because these lessons are for people who take action. And so those of you who do that, I'm so proud of you. Keep up the good work. Know that you can reach any of your goals. You can do anything when you're always taking action, because you've got the right resource. This channel, this is your resource. These e-guides are your resources. And so take action on this, and the sky's the limit with where you can go. So hope that's encouraging. Hope that you can take all of this to your practice room. Thanks everyone for watching. Stay non-glamorous. I will see you on the next lesson.